Hello everyone and welcome back to the Blokes podcast. It's Ryan here again with Nico and our special guest Matt from Mindfull Aus. Matt, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Well, I shouldn't say I'm good. I'm going all right. My wellness and everything's in a good place, but obviously some recent circumstances have me feeling a little bit uneasy. But I'm definitely happy to be here with you two. That's for sure.
We're happy to have you, mate. We're pumped and Nico, you've got, for those listening and not watching on YouTube, you've got "I love Ryan" written on your whiteboard behind you there.
What?
Is this like your affirmation that you look at each morning? I'm just imagining, like, you know how Rocky used to look at Ivan Drago in the mirror, but with hatred. But with you might have a picture of me on your bathroom mirror, but with
There's
love.
no hate in here, Hass. There's no
Just
hate
love.
in here. It's only love. I think I just put it up there to see what your ego would do. Would it be like, oh?
It looked at that before anything else.
There was like this ripple washed over you when you sort of settled into just a bit of a niceness there.
Yeah. It's so funny, because I even have. It's only when I really started the Centre for Healing that I started calling myself, like, introducing myself as Ryan, because, like, my name being Ryan Hassan, like, I was called Hass, like, my whole life, like, growing up. Like, Hass was just my name. And even when I got married to my ex-wife, literally people I'd known for years got invites and they're like, who the fuck's Holly marrying? Ryan? Like, people didn't even know my first name. Yeah. And it wasn't until I started the centre where I'm like, I better be a bit more professional and, start using the first name. So even I'm integrating my own first name.
Look
which
at
is
you
funnily
go.
enough.
Hey, Matt, I don't know if you've listened to many episodes of the podcast or not. I mean, I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've done your homework diligently for the last 24 hours of just sitting in a woke bloke's cocoon. But we tend to do a little idiom at the start of each show, and I think we just came up with one earlier, which was right up my alley. And so we try and just quickly, because we've got a lot of stuff we want to talk about today, but quickly, Matt, who was the first person that would have used that sentence, and where were they? Just let your imagination wander. Somewhere in time, somewhere in history, somewhere on planet Earth, and this person is the first person to say, that's right up my alley. What was the circumstances, and who were they?
You know, the first thing that comes to my head when you say that, and this is a beautiful look into my brain, is the Milky Bar kid. Who just walked into the bar full of cowboys and all the rest of it, and there's the Milky Bars, and he's like, yeah, they're right up my alley.
Right.
That's the first place my mind just went.
Did he?
Awesome, I love it.
Did the Milky Bar kid have a special alley that he would? Because I had in my head there was a little alleyway in between houses, just around the corner from my joint where I was growing up, and we would walk through there all the time. But I'm like, right up my alley, like, it's a good thing. Like, I feel like everyone used to have their own special alley.
I like where the Milky Bar kid used it, but why the term alley? Why is it? How is it constructed?
What if his girlfriend's name was Allie?
And there's a cowboy in there who's sleeping with him.
And he had
my alley.
And he had a really kinky, sexual life with her.
I think that's it. I think that's how it's done.
Hey, who wants to come and get right up my alley?
That's the best.
Right.
That's the best.
So
the
the Milky Bar kids walked into the saloon, pushed the doors open, and gone, I'm looking for someone to come and get up my alley.
Oh, Jesus.
Right. And they were into it, so that's why it's a positive thing.
I thought the Milky Bar kid was so innocent, and now I don't. I don't at all.
Apparently nice.
All right.
What a way to start.
I'm glad we sorted that out. That will be the most important thing we talk about all episode,
exactly.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
solved another riddle.
Matt, for those who, and a lot of, I know, my kind of audience and people who follow the Centre for Healing, a lot will know who you are and about Mindfull Aus, but for those that don't, just give us a bit of a rundown of your story. You started a non-for-profit Mindfull Aus years ago now, and what did that come off the back of?
Yeah, so unfortunately, my journey with, I guess, yeah, I work in the field of mental health and prevention, health promotion, all that sort of stuff now. And I guess my journey started at the ripe old age of 12 when I would lose, my first mate to suicide. And between the ages of 20 and 12 and 29 that I am now, I've lost a further 9 friends to suicide. So I guess anyone that goes through that gets to a point where they recognize that they've probably got some experiences that they could share for the betterment of others. And I guess that's how the journey started. And I had no interest in running a charity, and I guess if I had known what I was getting myself into, he might have looked a little bit differently. And but that's how the cookie crumbled for me. And I started a Facebook page in January of 2016 called Mindfull Aus, and purely it was for being mindful of those with a mindful. So it was a platform for people to share their experiences in hope that they would encourage someone else to change the narrative around what it looks like to live and be well, no matter the situation or challenge. So it was my rediscovery of hope visible in other people's kindness that led me to a place of wellness that enables me to sit in this chair right now. So for me, it was just a platform to hopefully provide that same level of hope, healing and recovery, acceptance and kindness that I received that enables me to be well for millions of people around the world. And yes, 9 months later, the page had turned into a not-for-profit charity, which now we work on high-risk areas of diagnosis and suicide right around Australia. So we work in regional and remote communities. We work with youth, so children and youth, I should say, because we work with kids as young as 3 right up until, mid-20s. Mm-hmm. And we work in blue-collar industries, or for the lack of a better word, we work with football clubs, our sporting clubs, construction, farming industries where suicide numbers are high and where it's very difficult and not as accessible to get help from professional services and support. So yeah, we what are we now? 4 years, close to 4 years as a non-for-profit, and it's gone quick, but it's just a pretty beautiful thing to be able to go through what you've gone through and to be able to channel that for something better. And I know that I probably wouldn't be here if I wasn't able to do that. So I'm very grateful for the platform that we've got, and grateful for every single person that values the work that we do with kids, with parents, with teachers, with communities, and mate, it fills me full of joy and keeps me feeling alive and bouncing out of bed every single day, knowing that there's always more to be done.
I'm taking over. Shut up. So I love how we keep finding and introducing each other to more people working in the mental health field, and I'd never come across Matt's work. So there's so many people in this industry. And have you heard of Trade Matt?
Yes, I have. I've met the boys in Queensland.
Okay, yeah. So Dan and Ed. So I started working with Dan and Ed when they just first launched, and then Jeremy Forbes from Holt.
Yep.
The sort of we all got together and had a dinner one night, and we were just sort of discussing about how there's so many people trying to do the same thing and achieve the same goal, but we're all in different narratives. We're all disconnected. Are you finding that? Are you finding it easy just to do it by yourself, or are you trying to work in with other people? Or
Oh no, definitely try and work in with other people where possible, mate. And like you said, people have different narratives and people have different motives as to why they started this, unfortunately, as well. I mean, they might have started out of the right place of their heart, but somehow they've got lost along the journey. So there's plenty of people that I agree with, and there's plenty of people I don't. So I mean, we try and align with the values and which want to reflect the behaviors that we want to put out into the world. And I think, we work collaboratively with many different organizations and people. You named Jeremy Forbes. He's just reached out and helped me in the last couple of weeks with a different proposal that I was putting forward. And, it might not be that we collaborate in terms of Holt and Mindfull Aus, but there's things behind the scenes that are always happening, and great relationships that I've formed with some really good people in this field of work. But yeah, I definitely think that collaboration is the key for us creating a more established and more stronger, powerful voice for people out there so that they know what exists. I think that that's really important. And, the more common that mental health becomes, which is the danger, the more people we're going to have jumping up in front of us trying to do their part, which is a beautiful thing. But to know that Australia has some really good organisations out there right now, and what they truly need is the help and support of the people that are passionate about the field.
So when you say the more common mental health can become, do you mean the more understanding people are that they all have mental health? Because
I think the more it becomes understood, the less stigma there is. There's going to be more people going, hey, I've got a story to tell. Hey, I want to get on stage. Hey, I want to create a program. I want to help people. And that's fantastic. But I would, as I've always said to anyone, and I wish someone had said to me, to go and support the established.
Yeah, because I agree with some people as you do, and I disagree with some people as well. And I guess from my perspective, I see a lot of people talking about it, but I don't see many people trying to implement change and give people into society the tools and resources to better self-manage, to better self-regulate, to better be responsible for their well-being. And I guess I'm a bit sick and tired of people smashing out the statistics and trying to drive guys out of fear into, just come at it from a different angle and start educating them. All right, you've all got mental health. There's stuff you need to do to get it in shape. There's stuff you need to do to keep it in shape, and this is what that looks like.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And I think that's the role of any advocate out in the country, and that's where this society is sick. Is we have this one set menu for what help looks like, because all we're doing is smashing everyone with, hey, if you're unwell, here's a number. Or, hey, if you're unwell, therapy and medication. What people need to understand is the menu for being well is thousands of things long, but nobody knows. Like I have ice baths and cold showers, and everyone looks at me like I'm an idiot. But if only
there's no cookie cutter system, is there?
Oh, I mean, as you can probably tell, it makes me fired up, because I agree with you. There's a lot of people out there that awareness is there. If you obviously you live under a rock if you believe that awareness ain't there for mental health and well-being. We know the stats, we know where to ring, we know all these things. People aren't ringing them for a reason. We need people to understand that the strength that they can be to themselves happens here when they understand what they can tap into and who they truly are at their core.
But the system at the moment, the awareness is just funneling people into a GP and then into a healthcare plan. And and that'll work for some people, but what I'm hearing from nearly 100%, it would be 100% of the blokes that I'm working with, is that system didn't work for them. In fact, it actually exacerbated their condition. So for the mental health advocates who are advocating for people to go to their GP and get a mental health care plan, go on medication, what are you trying to guide people into?
I'm trying to change the narrative around what it looks like to live and be, and that's, making people aware in this country that the core fundamentals to being a human being are love, belonging, connection, contribution, growth, these sorts of things. And once we understand how the human being works, we can show up and provide them what they need every single day, because we all have what that takes. And it does, by throwing them and handballing them to the next person and to the next person and throwing them through into a system that they get spat back out the other side, is not showing them the key fundamentals of what it looks like to be a human being. And that's love, belonging, connection, contribution, growth, creativity, all of these sorts of things. So, and
I think we're at a phase where the word used was perfect, Matt, was menu. It's like there is this whole menu of options, but just not enough people are aware of it right now, because there still are these set pathways. And I found it in the rehab industry, and like you said, I tried to form, because we were outpatient, I was trying to form some good relationships with people in the inpatient space, and like you said, I did end up finding some that were doing it for the right reasons. They were in it for love and help the person, but the majority had got into it for the right reasons, but now it was just simply let's churn out as much money as we can. Because what happens, you start something and you're on the ground floor, and all of a sudden you grow, and then you have staff, and then there's management and everything, and now all you see up here is not the person, but you just see a profit and loss sheet, and you're like, hey guys, last month we were down this much, and then all of a sudden we've got rehabs ready for people to remortgage their houses and take out all this superannuation and this kind of stuff, and it becomes so clinical, and then their success rate is about 10%, and it's like, what the fuck? I remember speaking to a doctor's clinic early on when we started the centre. It was hilarious. Me and Melissa went to all the healthcare clinics around us in Hampton just to let them know, hey, we're here. This is what we do. It is different, but if there's a client that you think might be able to benefit, as well as whatever you're doing, let us know. And we would have people get up and walk out on us. First of all, you had to bring the clinic lunch if you wanted to talk to them. So I was already pissed off because Melissa's like, oh, we've got to stop and get sushi for 20 people. I'm like, the fuck are we getting sushi for 20 people for? She goes, you have to bring them lunch or you can't even talk to them. I'm like...
But you got to get past the gatekeepers too.
I'm like, okay. And then anyway, they take like their 4 sushi rolls, and after we start talking, just fucking leave the room. And then the guy who ran the clinic just said, you know, you guys have got a fair bit of balls coming in here talking about this stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, we know that when we get a client coming in with a drug addiction, we refer, I won't name the place, but I said, we refer here. We have our referral pathways and they're fine. I said, that place you just mentioned has a 10% success rate. So you're sending them to a place where 90% of people are going to relapse within 6 months after getting out. So like, are you giving them the right care? And he didn't say too much after that. But it's like, this is when you start to realize that yes, there's all these referral pathways. But now with the internet, you know, it's in its very early stages, but people are starting to find, you know, I had an email literally this morning from a client I'm working with, and she just said, and you know, I'm so glad I stumbled across your website. And that's sort of how people are finding these different avenues right now.
That's so much better, Hass, because I had the same thing. I was trying to force my way in to the old system, and yeah, I did the whole take Subway and sushi, and it was fucking pointless. Well, it wasn't, because I learned a very valuable lesson.
Yeah.
Don't try and jam him away in there. Just create a different system. And as you said, someone came across your website. Someone saw me driving down in my Myndfit branded truck and found my website. Mm-hmm. And Matt, I was going to ask you. You know, the definition of madness is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So we can't realistically and rationally and logically expect the suicide rates to decrease using the same tired old system, can we?
No.
So that's where we need to start educating the market and educating people that there is alternatives to what they believe.
One of the best quotes I ever heard was from Dr. Bart Andrews, who's one of the most renowned psychiatrists in the world, and I've spent a lot of time with him in America, and he said to me, Matt, when we see a lot of mental illness being expressed, it's a sign the community is sick, not the person itself. That there sums up exactly where we're at as a country, and that there sums up exactly what the human being in this country is lacking, and that's for everybody to show up with love, belonging, and connection.
Connection, yeah. There was a really interesting study I read about people who have schizophrenia. And it was a list of like what are the key factors of people who have schizophrenia, and you know, you would make all these assumptions as to what they might be, and the number one determining factor was they were an immigrant, so they'd come from another country into a different culture and were having trouble connecting, and started developing schizophrenia, which is a serious mental disorder.
Well, I just know from my own journey, mate, and living with bipolar disorder, the thing that, you know, where I went horribly wrong was, you know, I know that I've always had the love and support of my friends and my family. That's always been there, belonging and connection. You know, maybe there was a disconnect there, but everyone's always like, well, you've always had the best of everything. So how does your argument for love, belonging, and connection stand up when you've always had that? And I said, but knowing it and showing it are two different things. So I always knew it, but I wasn't always seeing it. And they're two very fundamental different things, and that's what's happening in this country right now. If I go around and get in an auditorium of people like I did this week, and I say, everyone, throw your hands in the air if you care about the person sitting next to you. Yeah, everyone throws their hands in the air. Everyone leave your hand in the air if you've shown that person today. 100% hands go down. That's what's happening in this country right now. The difference between how much we say we care and show it is the difference.
I do the same with when I speaking. I say, everyone stick your hand up in the air if you've got mental health. In a room full of 100 blokes, 3 people on average will stick their hand up. And I say, what do you guys put your hand up? I've got anxiety, I've tried suicide, I've got schizophrenia. And I'm like, thank you for being so brave. Thank you for being brave and putting your hand up. But the reality is, everyone in this room should have stuck your hand up, because if you've got a body, you've got physical health. If you've got a brain, you've got mental health. We've all got mental health. So this is the thing that shits me, is that it doesn't shit me. It's something we really have to work hard to change, is to educate people that if you are ignorant to the fact that you have mental health, then you're not in a position to look after it. Yeah. And even people with mental illness still have mental health. So there's still people with mental illness can still attend to their mental health, and in those times where they're capable to, you know, look after it and think in a way that they want to think, it's going to improve their way of life so much more than if they just go, but I've just got it, this is just how I am.
I mean, we facilitate mental health first aid trainings here at Mindfull Aus, and I mean, we've got 24 people going through it today as well, which is a beautiful thing. But I sit there, and what I do is when we're in person doing it, I have a whiteboard, and I'm not a part of the training, but I just hear and notice what I listen, and I scribble notes on the whiteboard, because at the end I do 15 minutes of what I've seen and what we're going to change in this 15 minutes. And, you know, all day I hear suffer. And I'm like, see what we're doing for this country and this world is every time you say that mental illness and these things, bipolar, depression, anxiety are a suffering, we are painting that picture for the next person who gets their diagnosis to go, well, I give up. I'm suffering. It's a life sentence, instead of saying, hey, I live with bipolar disorder and it's a gift.
Yeah.
And if someone had told me that, I would have walked out of the clinic bounding and with energy, rather than believing for many years that I was a defect of humanity and that this was a life sentence.
Yeah, it's all about how it's framed for you, isn't it?
And that's the same with mental health and mental illness. We just need to reframe and change our language, because it is not a suffering. Suffering's a choice. And the choice that I made is not to suffer after many years. I sat there and did suffer for a long time because that was what I thought existed for someone with bipolar disorder. I thought that that's all there was to it, that I was living with something, that I was a broken machine instead of a person whose needs weren't being met.
How's this for a snapshot into society, though? When I asked that question at one meeting up in Swan Hill, who here has mental health, a guy came up to me afterwards and he said, mate, it was a real interesting way that you asked who here has mental health issues. And I said, I didn't ask that question. He interpreted it, he added on issues at the end of it, because as soon as you hear mental health, there's such a strong link in society to add issues or illness or something after it.
Yeah, it's a lot of people, a lot of bookings that I receive. You know, Mindfull Aus is a mental illness foundation. I'm like, we're a health promotion charity. And they're like, oh, same. I'm like, no. No, it's not. No, it's not.
He's into semantics, Hass. He's into semantics.
It's, that's where we've got to reframe these things. I mean, yeah, a lot of people out there believing that what they've got is an absolute burden, and it doesn't have to be that way.
There's a really good TED talk. I haven't watched it in years, but I'm going to watch it again, because it actually, when I was going to TAFE doing the diploma, I was doing my mental health first aid, and it was the mental health first aid guy that actually showed this clip, and it's a TED talk. The name's Eleanor Longden, and I think it's The Voices in My Head, and it was like at the end of the whole thing, and he showed it. I don't know why he showed it, because he said, oh, this is just a bit of a out there, interesting way of looking at things. But I watched it, and I'm like, this is an interesting, out there way. This is the way things should be done. But anyway, her journey was one of started getting voices in her head, which would start to narrate, like she opens the door, she goes and sits down, and all this kind of jazz. And then and she kept she told a friend about it, right? She was young, and so the friend said, oh, that's something wrong with you, like, don't listen to that, try and, push it away, go and see a doctor. And so she went and saw a doctor, got put on medication, they're trying to make these voices go away. All of a sudden, it's obviously a part of her that's trying to tell her something that she's suppressing. So now it's telling her to do bad stuff, and it's telling her to go and tip her water over the teacher at school's head. It's telling her to start fires. In the end, it got so bad that in their house the parents had to have plastic cutlery, because she would use the cutlery to harm herself, because the voices in her head would tell her that all the time. And anyway, this is where shit went on for years, and she was told she's going to have to manage this forever. And then eventually, I don't know how, but she came across a therapist who just said, look, what if we just started listening to the voices in your head and give them the attention that they deserve, right? Okay. I remember sitting in the classroom starting to tear up, where everyone else was like, "Oh, this is weird," and I'm starting to tear up, because all of a sudden, because I started listening to them, and they had needs, that I was ignoring for about 10 years or however long it was. And because I was ignoring them, they kept getting more and more vicious and more harsh. And all of a sudden she started listening to them, and she was, obviously able to go off the medication. And she says, I still get the voices sometimes, but they don't ever tell me to do anything bad. And she's actually started a non-for-profit called the Voices in Our Head to help people who have this same thing, not ignore this part of us and see it as defective, but to see it as a part of us that has an unmet need.
That's very similar to A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe in it, and on Dr. Nash. I mean, he ended up making friends with the voices, and I mean, it's the same thing with my core limiting belief system. I mean, I believe I'm a burden on the world, and that's why I do the work that I do. But when burden reared his head all the time, I'd try and kick back off him and ignore it, and I don't want to, Instead of now, when he rears his head, it's just like, hey, I know you're there, and I know you think that I'm a burden, but what we've done, while I believed I'm a burden, it's been pretty bloody beautiful. So show your face, keep showing up, because together we can create magic for the world. So
but that's the power of what can happen when we embrace instead of push.
Yep.
And I think that's what so many people live in fear of this thing, and this fear of being different or wired differently or having this thing. They see it as that deficiency, which we talk about, Hass, instead of embracing it and incorporating it into their life and accepting it within the parameters of who they are. And because without that self-acceptance, you can have no inner peace or contentedness.
Correct.
No, because you create a shadow, like Carl Jung says. You just create a bigger and bigger shadow that'll just want more and more expression.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like all the people that when as soon as I say if someone walked through the door now with a cure for bipolar, I'm not interested. And people will go, well, that's bloody ridiculous. How can you say that? All these people out there suffering, and you're sitting there saying it's a gift. And I'm like, yeah, well, imagine if 800,000 people in Australia living with bipolar disorder turned around and said what they're living with is a gift. This world would be a better place. But instead, we've got 800,000 people believing that they're looking for a cure, and they're holding on for the fact that there might be a cure one day. It's just that level of acceptance that I have. And when I learn to dance with it, create magic with it, maneuver with it, and guide what I've got, and know that it's crafted me into the person I become, all of a sudden my life's been fulfilling again, exciting again. And I think that's the same with any shit you go through. The world happens for us and not to us.
Oh, read this. What's that behind me?
I love Ryan. Sorry.
What's that up on the wall?
Love that.
What's that say?
Yeah, nothing happens to you. You happen to everything.
everything.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, that's what I'm talking to, I did a teacher development session this week, and all the teachers like, I've got so many things going in my head. I'm too busy to do this, to do that. I'm like, tell me what some of those thoughts are. Reel them off as you feel them right now. Boom, 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 boom. I'm like, grab it, action it. Grab it, action it. And then watch your life just flourish, because you're not ignoring what's happening around you and the action signals that the universe is thrown at you. Instead, you're going, hang on a minute. Yep. Deal with it. Can I create something with it? Can I accept it? Can I remove it? Instead of just going, nah, don't want to hear it, don't want to hear it, don't want to hear it. Drink, alcohol, addiction, whatever it looks like. So,
do you think people are trying to do too much, though? People have got too much on their plate. They're chasing too much. There's such a lack of contentedness out there. It's always, I have to have more, I need more, I must be more. And that's creating so much clutter in the head, which is creating alcoholism and blah, blah, blah. So while all that's there in action, are you also asking people just to stop and evaluate what's there and if they really need it? Is it that important?
100%. But while you don't action anything, like if you just believe, like for me, that's why I love my meditation, stillness, breath work, cold exposure, all these sorts of things, because they make the world scream at me exactly what I do need. And you can action the things and go, okay, well, I don't need this right now, but I'll remove it. And by removing it, you've ticked it off. But by ignoring it, it's still there. It's just like a humming in your back of your head. So these things, you slow the process down, and the clarity and focus I have with someone that lives with bipolar disorder is a prime example of what you can do with the mind and the brain when you pay attention to it. And we've become so not being bored. We just want to do something all the time. And, being bored is where genius is created.
I had a client once, and she was so conditioned to conflict from early childhood to school to then at work. And we did some work, and about 6 or 7 weeks into it, she came one day, she goes, "Oh, I'm really bored," when I asked how you are. And I said, "Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that." And as she was speaking, I started smiling. She goes, "What are you smiling at?" I said, "I think you've mistaken peace for boredom." And because she was so conditioned to conflict, when all of a sudden there was calmness and stillness and not all this inner clutter and everything, she thought that was boredom, but it was actually peace.
Yeah, we get the exact same thing. Yeah, it's just like, I haven't felt it in so long, and you just get mixed up. You're like, I just feel neutral. It's like, yeah, that's beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah. It's just like, and that's what these things have become such a pain in the ass for, because every time someone's bored, they reach for that instead of when they're bored. Just be bored. Just be content with that. That's a beautiful thing to know that there's time in the day to be bored, because this is such a rat race that we're living in. And I mean, we're seeing it right now with everything that's happening. Is everybody is freaking out because they're like, shit, I've got to pause for the first time in my life, and I've realized how much shit's going on in my head. You know, but for the people
they're
who
all
are
operating
self-aware
on.
and have that acceptance, they're going, this time's not so bad because I've got so much more time in the day to do the things that I wanted to do because I've had a pause. But they don't have all the shit going on in their head because they've actioned it before.
So many people are operating under this sense of duty or obligation. There's this massive "I have to" narrative that's pushing people forward, and that's creating an inability for them to actually be still and just to go, all right, I don't have to do anything actually.
And
That's
that
such
comes
a foreign
back
concept.
to, yeah, 100%. And I think that comes back to value alignment. You know, everyone's asking us to do different things and be different things, and Black Lives Matter and protest for this and empowerment in Turkey and all this sort of shit going on. You feel obliged to do everything, but it comes down to your values. And if, you know, that we all have the same amount of minutes in a day, but it's like, does that align with who I am or what I need to be doing? And is it a priority right now for me? But everyone just jumps at the bit to say yes, 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 and B, instead of just going, okay, you know, I don't have time for that right now because I need to put time into who I really am so that I'm living in integrity, you know, when our values and behaviors align. But yeah, we just do, and B, instead of just sit.
Well, S.N. Goenka said that we can't have peace in society until we've got peace within ourselves. And I think you're right that so many people are focused on changing humanity, changing society, but they're not stopping and working on all the tiny little cogs that create that, which is ourselves. So if we can all start focusing on ourselves and get ourselves in better health, better shape, you know, then out there will change.
Yeah.
Which is like you running Mindfull Aus, man. I mean, the last 4 years, I mean, I know that you've touched on a few things that you've been doing to help with your wellness, but I know that you've worked, you know, tirelessly on your own wellness because you have to be well to be able to be there for the people that are unwell. And that's the same with me and Nick for any therapists and that kind of thing. So I'd like to know sort of where your headspace was at in maybe your mid-20s, and then also what are some of the things that have led you to the wellness that you're at now, sitting here with us today.
Oh, yeah, mate. I mean, I think there's levels to the game, and that sounds cliche. There's levels to anything we do. And, you know, once I've figured out that there was levels to this brain and parts of this that I haven't tapped into, and to understand that every single day is another opportunity to achieve that, it's makes life exciting again. I think for a long time I was, you know, believe you're a burden, failure, and worthless on the world, and therefore, yeah, you suppress that and numb that, and you're content with that because you believe that you watch everyone else sail past you and you go, well, fuck it, this is how I've got to live for the rest of my life. And you don't realize, because you have that lack of understanding and education around how cool our brain is, to know that, fuck, I wasted a lot of time not putting time into myself. And I mean, everyone sits there and looks at my journey and goes, oh, but it's taken you 9 years to get to a place of wellness. I said, yeah, but 8.5 of those were fucking around doing nothing. You know, it's taken me, you know, and that's probably an exaggeration, but, you know, discipline, it doesn't take that long. I've just put time and effort into myself every single day, and I do it because I know how it feels to feel shit. I know what it's like to live at the bottom, and I don't know what it's like to feel at the top and live at the top, but I want to go there. And with the skill set that you have and being able to give that back, you can take as many people to the top with you as possible. So, I mean, over the last 12 months, the things and how thorough my blueprint to wellness is and how I live every single day has enabled me to live a life that I never thought was possible and achieve things that I never thought was possible. I mean, yeah, there's probably no humble way to say it, but it's just like when I get into my zone and do the work in here that I do, it's just some magic can happen. Some really, you know,
that Socrates quote that we are what we repeatedly do. So excellence, therefore, is a habit, not an act. And I think a lot of people get caught up in doing an act of meditation or an act of health or an act of well-being. But as you're saying, it needs to be consistent practice. It needs to be disciplined practice.
Yeah. I know exactly if I have a day off doing the things that I normally do. You know, I won't go completely cold turkey on everything I do, but if I drop a few things out of my wellness plan every single day, and I understand that my brain's a lot different to other people's, and everyone's is, but if I take a day off and start eating shit, don't exercise, don't jump in a cold shower, don't meditate, don't practice gratitude, I can guarantee tomorrow's crap. You know, and that's my brain's different than everyone else's, but that's the process you do by consistently doing these practices. You work out what works for you and what doesn't. Doing that stuff for me tomorrow and today and every day after that is not a chore. It's a want, and it's a want because I know that there's levels to this game, and 99 point something percent of people go to the deathbed only tapping into 30% of their brain's capacity. So I'm going to do whatever I can to be the exception and live a life that I never thought was possible, just to show other people that they can do the same thing.
It's funny when people look at their health and well-being that they only see it as a Monday to Friday job, and on the weekends I can relax. I don't have to do it. I can binge on the weekends. I can not look after my health, and it's just a
like
weird
I'll
thing.
treat myself.
Yeah, it's a health is an everyday thing to tend to.
It's like try having a baby, boys. You forget all about that, because it's not like, oh Tommy, it's Sunday. Can you please sleep in for another hour and a half? Doesn't work that way.
I had the client I was talking to you about before, and last week she was talking about how irritated she gets when her young girls wake up at 5:30 in the morning and start playing. And I said to her, all right, I want you for the next week just get up and observe them and look at why you're grateful for the fact that they're getting up at 5:30 in the morning. And just that simple little shift and reframe. She was in tears in today's session because she goes, oh my God, and then it just led to this flooding of gratitude for so many other things. And she was really embarrassed about how she hadn't seen it, how she couldn't see how great a gift it was to have these girls playing at 5:30 a.m.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like you said, Matt, and a lot of people. I've said this before as well. It's like, oh, how much time have I wasted? But it's like, I think we can only have these realizations when we're ready for them.
Ready.
That's I had a client last week, and she would be late 30s, maybe 40, and she just had a moment. We went back through an event, and then she just burst out laughing, and then after the laughing, she just started bawling her eyes out, crying. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? She goes, I just realised that I've spent my whole life, just worrying about what other people think. And that's been my main thing every single day. And I can't believe I've done that for 40 years. And I'm like, do you realise that most people come to that realisation on their deathbed? Yeah. So I'm like, you're ahead of most people. Just we've got to be happy for the realisation.
You're on the path. That's the main thing.
That's the thing, I guess, for a lot of people that don't want to embark on this wellness journey, because they're like, oh, well, I've scathed through it now, and what I've done's all right. And it's just like there's no willingness or want to tap into different parts of the brain. And I think that's where we've got to try and find ways and means to show people how beautiful it is when you do.
I think they're so content just in survival mode.
It's survival. That's exactly what it is. There's no fight there. It's just bathing in the crap that they're sitting in, knowing that they can get through.
Yeah, I've survived today. Oh, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'll survive tomorrow. There's just such a disempowerment in that.
Yep. And that's what I've seen a lot of with the whole COVID thing. I was being on podcast after podcast, and they're like, Matt, how important is it as an advocate, to tell people right now that, if all they do today is just get out of bed, that's a good thing. And I'm like, why are we telling people that? Why are we advocating for shit? What we should be advocating for is aim high, and if you miss, you'll fall just below it somewhere. But if you aim for a shit day, you will achieve a shit day.
I think people do that because when they set the bar high, they do it as an expectation instead of a goal, and it's really rigid and concrete and creates a failure mindset where we can set the bar equally as high but with an experimental goal-driven mind, and it's more movable. It's if we fail, we can step back and evaluate and assess and then reset the goal. Yes. But that's the thing, people set the bar so low because they're afraid of failure.
We are so accepting in this world, in this country or our communities of just being mediocre. We just sit there and say, if this is all you can do, that's cool. And if COVID is something that we've never ever been through, so if you get through the next 6 weeks and all you do is just get through, that's okay. It's just like, why are we painting that picture for people?
I'm loving the clients at the minute because they're like trying to get off drugs and alcohol, and they're like at the start, they're like, this is like the stupidest idea, like trying to do this during COVID, because it's going to be the hardest time to do it. And I'm like, yeah, let's fucking do it, because if you could get off a drug addiction during COVID, imagine after COVID. Imagine how high your self-esteem and confidence is going to be, knowing that you did something in what you deem is to be the hardest circumstances to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, I seen J.K. Rowling at one stage go, for everyone out there pushing their agendas about how COVID should be a time where we can grow and use the pause and that to become better, should basically she was saying should shut up because you're making everyone feel bad. And I'm going,
Yeah.
what? You go write another book or something. Like, what are you doing? You're telling everyone that it's okay to be a heap of shit. Like, that's dangerous.
What's really going on is I think, if you look beyond all of that, what you're really seeing is classic human nature. People just want to stay in their comfort zones. People just want to be nice and comfortable. People don't want to have fucking cold showers. People don't want to get up at 5 a.m. and go do push-ups. But this is the thing. Like, once you override that old programming, that old narrative, those limiting beliefs, that conditioning, you push through that, then you see that that's where the magic happens. But 80% of society want to live in their comfort zones.
Yeah, you build a healthy relationship with everything in your life that causes you stress, pain, discomfort, or a challenge. Essentially, your life's conquered. So, I mean, I don't like cold showers and I don't like ice baths, but I mean, if I build a healthy relationship with them, the water temperature doesn't change. It never gets any easier, but my mindset changes, and that way I build this relationship where the cold is my friend. And that's the thing that we do with anything in life, and that's just one example. But people don't want to do 2 minutes of stress. They'd rather live a lifetime of it. And so it's just like, for me, it's an easy trade. Like 26 minutes of exercise a day is 12 hours of good positive brain health. I'm going, well, I don't really like these runners and I don't like getting chafed, but I'm going to do it. These are the things that we've got to change. And people don't understand that. They'd rather go, oh yeah, no, running's not for me, or meditation. I just can't meditate. My head's too busy. And it's just like, well, you continue doing what you're doing.
Come and do 2 hours of it then.
Yeah.
Go out and live in an ice bath.
I have the same thing when I'm running my meditation classes. I do Vipassana, so sitting in stillness, and people look at that and go, oh, that looks really peaceful. I'm like, you don't know how fucking hard you're working internally just to not move a muscle. Like, it's excruciating sometimes.
But it's like the people who say I can't meditate because I can't sit still. It's just like, that's the last thing that you need to worry about in meditation is sitting still, because you're just putting so much time and effort into actioning things. That's the beautiful part of it, seeing things and hearing things that you didn't know existed, instead of they're worried about I'm sitting on it. I can't sit still for 5 minutes. It's just like, wow. That's where we're at.
I bounce between doing meditative exercise and then meditation. So I use sitting in stillness for helping people to let go of their attachments and expectations and to develop some discipline. But then we'll bounce out of that and we'll go and do some juggling or slow walking. So essentially I'm just trying to help people to be present and just to observe, and that's what the sitting in stillness does, is observe that sensation. It's not pain, it's not pleasure, it's just observe it and realize if it doesn't feel good, it's going to go away soon. But if you become so reactive to it, as soon as you feel discomfort, you go, oh, ouch, and you try and move away from it, and you're doing that on that micro level, then imagine what you're going to be doing out here in the real world.
No, 100%. And like you said before, anyone who can't sit still for 5 minutes will do it for 10 then. So
Yeah, exactly.
They need double.
Matt, tell us about this new project that you've just started up, Reflecting and Ascending. I'm excited to hear about it. What's the origins of it and what's it all about?
Yeah, so I just really, mate, there's playing the space of prevention every day, it looks like, but and telling my story and things like that, you get to a place where, as I say, when I walk out on stage, if all that comes of this today is that someone else looks at me and goes, I can do a better job than that bum, well, then I'm happy, because I don't want to be up here telling my story all the time. It's still something that I would, prefer not to do, but I do it because I see the need for it. However, I just got to a place where what really fuels me is not playing at the bottom of the cliff. What fuels me is shifting people's mindsets and empowering them to understand the different skill sets that are available to them when they tap into the person of who they really are. So, I want people to engage with themselves, the people they love, and the people around them from a place of inspiration. And I want to do that by teaching people about the strengths of who they are, their values, communication skills, the growth mindset, all these sorts of things that have enabled me to get to a place of wellness and completely remove myself from a conversation around suicide. I mean, Mindfull Aus is always there. It'll always be my baby. It'll be the thing that I sit back and continue to put time and effort into. However, the stuff that really fuels me and drives me is getting people at the top of the cliff, and that's showing people the beauty of who they really are, as unique as they are, and helping them, I guess, flex the muscles of their emotional struggles.
So it's more you stepping into this space of more working with people one on one based on what you've learned over the journey,
Yeah,
as
I mean,
opposed
I've
to
had
the
a lot of
speaking and
people.
everything.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time there, I was in this mindset that I had to do things by the masses, and while it's really good to hit the numbers that I do, I really want to work with the people who really want to be worked with, and like the work you do. You want to be there with the people that are throwing their hands up and going, "Hey, I want to be better," and whatever that looks like. If you want to be better in business, let's do it. Like, there's tools and strategies and techniques that I use that are good for all different, personal and career, whatever it looks like. So, I just want to engage in the people that really want to be worked with and work with them closely and thoroughly over a period of time. So, I mentor a couple of people at the moment, and I thoroughly enjoy it, and I see the impacts that they go out and make in the world. And essentially, that's what I want to be able to do, is give all my skill sets back to other people, and they can take what they know, leave what they don't like, and go on and do heaps of good work and be the person or make the difference in the world that they were born to make. So, that's what really fuels me. And yeah, I'm really loving the programs that we've got. A lot of it's self-discovery for both women and men. Rebooting your life is like other programs like that. And, just self-discovery, like I said, just working on the person that we are and becoming the best version of ourselves, and knowing who that person is first and foremost, because a lot of us don't even know our strengths. We don't know our values, and we don't actually know who we truly are at our core. So, yeah, I like playing in those fields.
Yeah, I love it, mate. I love it. And I also want to talk about, because me and Nick have talked a lot on this podcast. Like, we work with, on a micro scale, we work with like sort of broken adults. I don't like the word broken, but like people who need this work and everything. But if we're looking long term, like 30 years down in the future, like, how are we going to, create a lot less issues with mental health, addiction, and all that kind of jazz? And me and Nick have spoken about, we need to be getting kids young and teaching them about this stuff, and teaching them about emotions and vulnerability, and being in a safe space to be able to open up about these things. And I know that you've piloted a program and are now looking at expanding a program for kids, I believe, primary school age.
Yeah, mate. We're even working with kids as young as 3 in kindergartens at the moment, which is a really beautiful thing. So, Healthier Hearts and Lighter Minds is the program, and it aims to do exactly that. We work with the 5 core human emotions in the face, which is joy, fear, anger, disgust, sadness, with the 6 being shock and surprise. And there's years and years of evidence around that. So we just tap into that, and to create the dialogue for these young kids, these young champions that show us the true meaning of life, to find ways and means where they grow up and be able to identify their emotions in themselves and others, control their emotions with a range of different techniques, and express their emotions with a range of different techniques, or find the help and support that they need. So I think it's really important that they work out and find ways to articulate what they experience. I think there's a lot of men, and men get harshly criticized for being the ones that don't want to speak out, but there's enough evidence to suggest that the spaces held for men are ones of recoil. So we have to find ways in which these men know how to express their emotions or articulate their emotions in a way that doesn't make people recoil.
But a lot of the time, blokes will struggle being vulnerable, and that's, I think, what you're really going to teach these kids, is to create a space to be vulnerable in, and to feel safe enough to express their emotions. But I'm working with so many blokes who say, well, I try and tell my partner, I try and talk to someone, and they just run straight over them. They run straight over their emotions. So then they go, well, fuck it. I tried. I put myself out there, and you don't listen, or I'm not heard, or you say I'm an idiot, or you call me a poof, or I'm weak. All right, I'm just going to retreat and shut these bastards down again.
That's why it's such a long-term thing. It's like this, because it's like, you could teach these kids in schools, right? All these beautiful tools, techniques, and understanding around emotions. Then they come home to emotionally unintelligent parents. So you kind of got this, that they're getting 2 different messages. Because one of the main issues is that emotions get shut down in the home. It's like, as a boy, we start to have a tantrum. It's like, that's bad. Go sit in the corner. So all of a sudden we learn to just suppress. So now we're teaching the opposite in schools. But it's like, eventually, and then so if you're talking about Nick, a grown man, and then their wife, like, that's their wife's just got that emotional unintelligence as well, because she probably saw that from her father when she was younger.
Well, is it that though, or is it? And this is at the risk of triggering women's lib. Is it more a feminine thing because they tend to put their emotions before a man's emotions. It's they're more emotionally driven creatures. They well, why are we talking about your feelings? We should be talking about my feelings, because that's what I'm hearing.
That can work both ways.
There's a huge amount of evidence right now, and Brene Brown's been doing it for a long time. There's a lot of evidence around the fact that when men are posed with the question of how they're feeling or talk about their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, they will normally jump at the opportunity to. But it's the space held from, like we talked about, and what it shows, that evidence is so clear as day that shows Brene Brown, and she talks about it a lot, is how that women, when they have their partner tell them their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, they recoil and run away from that conversation immediately after they ask the question, because of the fear of having a feeling like they're got to be a parent to them instead of a partner to them, and they don't want a man that they have to be a mum to. So that's why men recoil in the fear of having conversations with women. And that's where we're harshly criticised, a lot of men, for not being open about our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Because for some reason I can talk to men, and I bet you two as well can, and they'll quite comfortably talk to me about their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. But for some reason, they don't find that comfort in many other places.
Open. Yeah. So I
Correct.
Think
absolutely. I mean, I'll tell my story to as many people as humanly possible if they're willing to hold space for it.
Exactly.
I always have been.
And so we need to teach people, it's got to be two-found effect, teach people how to hold space for others, and then teach the others how to communicate and tap into and connect with and express what it is that they feel.
And relationships are the hardest, because like there's a dynamic in the relationship, and so that dynamic has been fairly solid for people for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, however long it is. And now, look, I'm going through something similar now, because I'm starting to create some different boundaries for myself in the relationship. And so now Melissa has to sort of integrate my new boundaries. Now, she obviously is pretty woke herself, so she understands that's what's going on, and she will do her work to integrate that. But when people aren't aware of this stuff, all they see is my partner changing the dynamic of the relationship, and that's very uncomfortable to me. Hang on, he hasn't spoken about his emotions for fucking 20 years. Now he's pouring his heart out to me. That's a massive dynamic change, and that's going to shake her up completely. Yeah, and if she's not willing to be able to hold that space, that's why it's going to create issues, I believe.
I'm having something similar but different, where my partner tells me to stop being so sensitive, and that's a misinterpretation on her behalf, is I'm just expressing my needs or whatever. But then I'll have an emotion, I'll be disappointed or I'll be frustrated or something, and then she turns out and uses it against me and says, oh, that's just you not getting what you want. And I'm like, and then that just fucking crushes me even more.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, I'm in a different scale because I don't have a partner, but this is so relatable, and I don't. It's vulnerability in myself sharing this. But the last 3 people that I've gone on dates with or seen have all said the same thing to me. Matt, I'd be too cold for you. You're too sensitive, and I don't know that I could deal with someone that speaks so openly about their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Like, I'm too cold for you. Like, that's my problem. That's something that I need to go and deal with. Like, this is what's happening for me in a dating world as a man, because girls don't want to hold the space for someone who is so open and honest about what they experience. Whereas,
but I think what Hass said earlier made so much sense. Is they don't want another child, like to look after. They want a man who is emotionally self-sufficient and doesn't have any needs whatsoever, and is just, I am here for you. I'm the rock. I'm your rock.
And that's their misconception, though, because someone who shares their emotions, and so, like, I mean, you know, I am emotionally like I've got it all intact. I'm just someone who's open and honest, self-sufficient. But yet they see it as, oh, he shared his emotions, no go zone, red flags, you know, and that's the misconception. You know, someone who talks about their thoughts, feelings, and emotions is self-sufficient. It's the people that stand there and pretend like, I don't own a bag of shit and my life's sexy just the way it is. That's not self-sufficient, because every single person has a bag of shit, and it's not sexy to hide it. But that's the misconceptions we're having right now.
We're all experiencing the same things, but some of us are okay expressing it and communicating it. Other people are hiding it, and because they don't want to be weak or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like, how attractive would it be to be with, and I'm not just saying this about me, I'm saying it about anyone in the world, but it's just like, how attractive is it to be with someone in your life that actually can action and know what they're experiencing and can be open about it, so that you can share it together, rather than have someone who just goes and deals with their shit and blows off over there and cracks the shits and
Matt,
stems it with addiction or whatever it looks like.
I think that's called intimacy. and I may be wrong, but I reckon it's called intimacy, and I reckon that's pretty key in a relationship as well. It creates a bit of depth to a relationship. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up somewhere.
It's non-existent in a lot of them.
Well, it's not, but people think intimacy is just shagging, having sex.
Yeah.
People think intimacy is just a physical thing, but intimacy is both opening that space and stepping into it and being vulnerable and going, this is how I'm feeling. Oh, by the way, how are you feeling? Oh, and checking in on each other. I am looking after your heart, and here is my heart, and can you look after my heart as well? And
exactly right.
If that's missing, that's so lacking.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's just scary for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because people like me who, there isn't a part of my journey you can't find if you just Google it.
So,
Yet I've got to somehow go, well, shit, if I want to date, do I have to go back into Michelle and pretend that all this never happened? Do I? And they're like, people are like, oh, did you tell them that you do what you do for work? I'm like, of course I fucking did. And they're like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. She'll run for the hills. And it's just like, well, and it's not what I want, but this is what's happening because men are led to believe that, oh no, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have showed any sort of. She'll find your past, and I'm like, well, imagine finding someone that's owned their past. Jeez, that might be.
They're gonna find it eventually.
Yeah, I'm like, that must be scary knowing that someone's had a shit past, but they've gone on to do beautiful things with it. But instead, it's like, no, you should have just left the past in the past. Like it is what it is.
It's this image that we're trying to hold up. It's right now because we're in Thailand and we have cars back home. So we're using there's a company called Car Next Door, and you can basically rent your car out if you're not using it. Right? It's like someone books your car for 2 days, and there's a lockbox near the car, and they borrow your car. Anyway, so Mel's car's an Audi A5. It's like a nice car. And anyway, I was interested as to who was borrowing it, and sometimes because it's near Mel's mum's house, and Mel's brother would go out and help him with the key and that kind of thing. And just as I suspected, it was young men borrowing the car to take girls on dates, and then they would have to keep borrowing it the next date because they couldn't be seen to rock up in their shitty little Mazda or something. And I'm like, at some point, bro, when we come back, you're gonna have to stop borrowing the Audi. But it's this persona that we want to show up that I'm successful and blah blah blah, and look at my car instead of my emotions.
Yeah.
But for those of us that are sensitive and okay with sharing things and are open and vulnerable, that gets mistaken for a weakness instead of a strength. And this is what emotionally immature people, or emotionally retarded in a literal sense, closed off people, shut down people, see us being expressive and go, no, you're just being soft or blah blah blah. But it's takes so much more strength to expose yourself and go, here is my heart. Have at it, than to try and hide and protect it behind barbed wire and machine guns.
Which is why I think we're heading in the right direction. It's just slow because it's like with programs like yours, Matt, in schools, kids are actually getting the right information about emotional intelligence, which is something that I know when I went through school, my God, there was none of that going on, right? So we're getting the right information there. Okay, then we have the home environment, and there's more and more adults now that are becoming aware that everyone's got mental health. Why? Because sports stars are talking about it. Yeah, I hate that it takes things like that, but a footy player will come out and they'll be seen to take it more seriously. So they're starting to understand. So all of a sudden, these kids that are now learning in schools who are 3, 5, 7 years old, one day they're going to be parents. And they're going to be able to teach the home environment a lot better emotionally. Plus, there'll be still more emotional stuff going on in schools because it's going to be so successful. So it's like it's going to feed off itself, I think. I think it's just going to be a 30-year process.
Oh, if not longer. But yeah,
it's
the idea is
generational, for sure.
Yeah. That's why we have to just bleed new young waves of young champions who show up in the world just the way they are, but with a better understanding of who they are, so they can be more of themselves, believe in themselves, and love themselves a little bit more. Because what we're doing at the moment is, these kids show us the true meaning of life, and that's to have bounce, to have courage, to have an imagination, to create, and to not give a shit about what other people think. But as soon as we get a little bit older, we lose all that, and us adults lose all that ability, and because society paints us in a way that we should behave and act. Whereas, as I'm saying today to people that are whinging, bitching, carrying on about COVID on the internet, it's just like see someone with a different opinion to you, take a backward step and just go, okay, isn't it beautiful that there's other people in the world that think differently to me? Isn't it great that we're not all the same? And just have a breather. But yet we try and paint this picture that you have to be like that, you have to do like this. And therefore these kids with beautiful imaginations and so much creativity and energy about themselves just get smacked on the head because we are led to believe that we have to be something, but they also don't know how to articulate what they're experiencing when they're experiencing it.
Yep, so true. Nick, we've lost your audio. You're talking, but I can't hear you. I'm sure it's very, very beautiful stuff, by the way.
I love this.
It'll probably be still recording on Thingo. Anyway, we're just about coming up on time anyway. Matt, where can people find you? What channels? Where can they get in touch?
Yeah, just all the social medias. You'll find me at Matt Runnalls. MattRunnalls.com is the website as well, which I'm doing all the new stuff, and there's online programs and things that we're doing. And obviously there's charity at Mindfull Aus, which is, we're always looking for people to join in the ways in which we're trying to achieve more resilient communities. And yeah, it's a pretty beautiful thing to be working with all these kids. So as I always say, don't just follow the journey. Let's see how we can do things together and reach out if there's ways in which we can change the world together. So there's the best is yet to come.
Yeah, and I think that it's this connection piece, I remember that event that you hosted, that you invited me out to speak to down at Warrigal, and obviously for very tragic reasons, someone in the community, a young fellow, had committed suicide, and it's those things where you have a room of 300 people, whatever it was, but by the end, everyone feeling very connected, that we're all on this journey together of just trying to work out how to be a human and get through this thing in a happy, healthy space, and connection is such an important part of that.
Yeah, it's a pretty beautiful thing when you can just have, as we did that day, you just have some blokes that are just everyday blokes like you and me rock up on stage and tell their truths, and it encourages more and more people to do so. So, it's unfortunately we met in tragic circumstances at that event, but hopefully that we can create events where people in the numbers, 400 or 500 like did that day, in regional communities can show up and go, this is important to me and I don't want to be on the other receiving end or sitting 15 rows back, 4 seats across at a funeral like I have. So, hopefully we can be proactive in our approach to changing what the world looks like, not only for ourselves, but the next generation of young legends.
Love it, mate. Love it. And you're a legend yourself, mate, and we're so happy to have you on today and really, really appreciate the work that you do, and I really appreciate our friendship. And I appreciate not hearing Nick for a bit, to be honest. I'm really enjoying this little last bit of the podcast.
Yeah,
Oh, no. He's rubbed out the love heart of Ryan. Oh, no. I Ryan. That's profound, actually. All right, mate. We'll let you get back to it. And, mate, once again, we appreciate you and your work, and we encourage anyone listening to get in touch with you and your work.
Awesome, lads. Thanks for having me, and continue to do the work you're doing, because it's making the world a better place. So thank you.
Beautiful, brother. Peace out.
Cheers.